Let's talk about whether or not somebody should keep their current home and use it as an investment property. We get this question often, especially post COVID, when somebody's sitting on a 3% interest rate on their current home and now they want to go buy a new one. And they ask the question, or they're considering, should I keep my current home as a rental property or should I sell it? So I actually have some really strong thoughts on this. So you probably don't know this, but for those that do know me, there was a period in time for about 15 years or so. I had a lot of rental properties. Caroline and I got up to owning 16 single family rental properties here in Dallas Fort Worth area. And that was over the course of probably about 15 to 16 years. It started out, I always wanted to growing up. Like I wanted to have a real estate pool of rental properties. And the reason why I don't now, you say, well, why'd you sell? Well, we sold the back end of COVID when things were just so crazy and so good. What prompted it is we had 3 homes of the 16 that were kind of like pills. The tenants were a little off. One of them, the property just always had problems. And another one was just not a great property in general. It's one of the, we had 16 properties, 2 of them were bad purchases. So you're not going to bat 1,000. So keep that in mind too, by the way. But I ask folks, I say, do you want to? So now the question goes back to the person who's considering this. So let's say it's you, right? You're asking the question, should I keep my home or should I sell it? So I got a couple of questions, and the 3 questions are this, and I'll elaborate on each one. How long you wanted to be a landlord? How many homes do you plan on buying in the next 5 years? And lastly, like what if I were to snap my fingers and give you the equity in your current home, and you could buy any home you wanted for an investment property, would you still pick your current home? And I think that's the most powerful question, but let's take them in order. So first of all, how long do you want to be a landlord? I ask that question because it does take a certain amount of just work, mental fortitude, financial liquidity. That's the big one. People think, oh, well, it's going to cash flow. Look, I can give you 3 instances, and I think maybe even 4. Caroline would know better than I would. 4 different occasions, 3 or 4 different occasions, tree roots grew underneath our houses into the main sewer lines. If you don't know what happens when that happens, you got sewage, literally waste coming up through the bathrooms, the kitchen sinks, the bathroom sinks, and the tenant has to move out because there's literally a cesspool sitting in their house. So now you're not getting rent. And in each case, I want to say the big one was like $45,000 to fix it. The other 2, I think, were like 30, 35,000. I think one was only 22 because they had to tunnel under, fix it, and do whatever they do. And that's not covered by insurance. So you better have a pretty good reserve, because guess what? If that happens and you don't have the 20 grand or whatever it's going to take to fix that, or $45,000 to fix that problem, you think, oh, it's not going to happen. It's new construction, whatever. Fine. We had tornadoes come through. Tornadoes hit Dallas. I forget the year, 2018 maybe. 6 of our properties got hit. And you're thinking, well, insurance does cover that. Yep. But at $10,000 deductible, that's $60,000 we had to have in our bank account to write a check for, to make sure that insurance, and insurance won't cover everything. So then there's more on top of that. That was not a great year. That sucked. So do you have the financial liquidity to own an investment property? Because the good news is, at the time when we had 16 of them, yeah, 3 get hit, 4 get hit, 5, whatever, you at least got some cash flow still coming in from the others that can help you out. So the same part to how long you want to be a landlord. My next question is, do you want to do the work? And people are like, yeah, I can handle 1 home, 2, whatever. Cool. Do you have the reserves, liquidity? But then my real question to them is, cool, as a landlord, what do you think your return on investment, your return on capital, what do you think that's going to be? What are you looking for rate of return? What do you mean? I'm going to get $300 or $400 cash from this a month. Well, yeah, I know that. But if you sell your house and we take the $100,000 of equity that you got in there, and you go put it into the S&P, let's just say the S&P, or you can just put it in, depending on when you're watching this, CD that's paying 5%, right? You can get that same type of return. If the S&P gets 10% on average, that's 10 grand a year you're going to make in the S&P, and the money is liquid the whole time. So in the house, you can't go get that money until you sell it. So think about that. Like, what return are you really expecting? Do you want a 20% return? Because to me, it would need to be at least 20% or more to keep your money in there, because otherwise just go stick in the S&P and look up 20 years from now and you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine long-term. So historically speaking, I can't obviously guarantee the future for the stock market. So I think that's typically the first one that says, okay, that question, like, do you want to be a landlord financially, what are you expecting? Because if people say, well, I don't know, then you haven't been serious about it and you probably don't want to be a landlord. The only reason why they're asking the question is because they got a 3 or 4% rate and they just don't want to get rid of it. Get rid of it. Go buy a bigger new home. Take the equity from this one and go buy a slightly bigger home. I'd rather have 3% appreciation on instead of a $400,000 home, a $500,000 home. So instead of making 12 grand a year of appreciation, go make 15 by buying a slightly bigger home and hopefully get that media room you want, or the bigger backyard, or the right school district. Sell the house. Don't be the landlord unless you really want this to be a landlord. So that's question number one. Number two, how many homes do you plan on buying in the next 5 years? Well, probably no more. Well, cool. It kind of goes back to question number one. Do you really want to be a landlord? So let's say, man, I do. This is going to be the first investment property of many. Awesome. Man, Mr. Smith, I'm super excited for you. That is fantastic. How many properties are you going to buy? I don't know. I'd like to get 3 or 4. I don't know if I can afford it. Well, why don't we sell your current home and take the money and go buy 2 homes with it? So if you really do want to start this being a portfolio, a lot of times when I talk to folks, they have really good equity positions. Take this and go buy 2 homes from the equity you're here and just go put down, use that money for the down payment on 2 different homes. And then number 3, and this is, I think, the most important, if I did give you that money, if I pretended that you have to sell this home, would you go rebuy this home as your first investment property or just any investment property? Because a lot of times these homes are $500,000 and $600,000 homes, and people are like, I want to make it an investment property. I'd rather you go buy 2 $300,000 homes instead of keeping your $600,000. Because again, typically you're going to find those rent better, the better bang for your buck, dollar for dollar. So should you keep your home as a rental? Man, if you can say I've always wanted it, and this was my first, just to put it in perspective, I'll put my money where my mouth is. My first home was a townhome. I bought it for $100 grand. Today is probably 200 in today's dollars, but I bought it for $100 grand. My second one was a townhome in the same community, like just right across a stone's throw away, where I rented it to my brother and best friend. They moved out after about 2 years and I rented it to somebody else. And then I eventually moved out when I got married with Caroline and we bought our first house. But my point is, I would have repurchased that home. So if I said, hey, I moved out, I'm going to keep it, cool. If your first starter home is what you own, and you would buy that home again for an investment property, that's an awesome, awesome answer. So think about these 3 questions. I know it's a long, drawn out, 10-minute video, whatever this is, but I'm telling you, this is a very impactful series of questions that you need to ask yourself of should you keep your current home. Obviously, if questions, everybody's different. So I don't want to pretend like, hey, this is just a hard yes or no, but do consider, do you really want to do it? Because in most cases, I'm going to probably say you don't need to keep it. I don't care if your rate's 2 or 3%. Go get a bigger house, go get a nicer house when you want to live in and go get depreciation, or go invest your money with something else that you don't have to do with it and focus on what's important to you in your world. If you're passionate about real estate, awesome. That's step 1. Maybe you do, but if most people aren't. So call me if you have questions. As always, reach out to us, forward, share, subscribe. The Mortgage Mark team is here to help. And remember, when you think mortgage, think Mark.